Thank you so much for having me. Obviously in Catholic, the parochial schools are so important to us. When you guys are successful, we are successful, and we can definitely tell who all the Christ the King kids are when they come through. They have a great education, great attitude. So, we want to be the loudest supporters of the elementary schools that we possibly can be. And so I hope that, my presence here today kind of emphasizes that, just as far as, everybody knows that we are doing everything we can to support you guys, and hopefully that in turn comes the same way for us. We've gotten to know a lot of your administration and faculty, over the years, and we just think y'all have a great team, a great leadership group here at Christ the King. And so I'm here to talk about this book, The Anxious Generation, which might come up here in a second. Raise your hand if you have heard about it, read it, own it, or are reading it. Okay, good. So a fair number of y'all. We've been basically banging the drum about this book for the last 6 months that it's been published in Catholic. My boss has recommended it to our parents on 4 separate occasions. He goes for you guys. He said if anyone reads it and they don't like it, he will buy your copy for you. So that's a pretty standout point there for him to say. Also, within the diocese, this is not just a Catholic that we're saying this, but we had a principals retreat where it was discussed, led by our principal, Matt Dempsey. There's a webinar that's coming up on it for all the faculty members that throughout the diocese at every Catholic school if they want to see it. So it has been hit by every single school, whether the administration is recommending it to the teachers, whether the administration bought it for the entire faculty. But basically every Catholic school in Arkansas has been discussing this. And so obviously we think that if the teachers are reading this book, that's something that you as parents would probably want to check out as well. And the line that Mr. Tracy says about it is, if you really want to understand your children today, then this is the book you need to read. And what I'll say is, I've got a kindergartner and a first grader. If you are afraid of the problems that teenagers are having and college kids are having today, and you have little kids, you need to read this book, because this is going to be the way to prevent those problems for them to have when they are older. And so, we're getting there. So that's right. So, as an English teacher, this slide just hit me the first time I ever saw it. And this was made in 2017. I would have thought this was something that came out in COVID, or something that was made just the last couple of years or whatever, but it was 7 years after when the Anxious Generation author Jonathan Haidt said this started, which was all the problems that we're facing today started in 2010. And so when I first saw that, it's like, that's just so brutal that here a kid is just, if I go have an adventure, I would rather just stare at my phone, just stare at this device. And so, when we think of the problems that kids are having today, we parents are just as bad. And so one time, I was doing work after school, on my phone. I was texting either Mr. Tracy or Mr. Dempsey, and my daughter was in first grade now, she was in kindergarten time, so I'm like, Dad. I was like, hold on. She's like, Dad. I'm just like, hold on, I'm just engrossed in answering this problem at like 4:30. And she goes, Dad, get off your phone. And it was the grossest thing I had ever heard. I just about jumped off the couch and wanted to throw my phone to the wall. Because this is everybody else. That's not me. I'm not the guy staring at my phone or anything like that. That's all the other, plebs that you see in society that are just like, just staring at their phone. They can't live without it. That's not how I am. But whether I'm doing something super important or if I'm scrolling through Facebook, it doesn't matter what it is, that's what my daughter sees. And when I saw that, and that happened to me, that came together where I was like, oh my gosh, surely I'm not that guy, but to my children, I was. So it really made me realize after reading this book that it's not just the kids, we parents are just as guilty, right? We have just as much blood on our hands as far as what we're doing, because our children are going to replicate how they use devices and everything if we're using it all the time too. If Mom and dad are always on it, they're always scrolling, they're always taking pictures, and what's the problem? Why can't I? And so, when you read this book, you really realize how you would think, like, this is just for teenagers, or just for older kids, and there were things that I took out of this book for how I would apply it to my own life, and also for my kids. And so that's where I realized this is so valuable for us to come and speak to you guys about this today. And so what Hayek is arguing is that this book is altering not only how we live as adults and how our kids are growing up, but it's also altering how our children's brains function and how they develop. And when you hear that, if you think of someone's, your kid's brain is going to be altered completely because they're staring at a screen, I would hope that that would be alarming enough to you to say, there's something that has to be done here. Because the last thing I want is that 20 minutes of just tablet time to be able to destroy my kid's brain when it was just a little bit every single day. And so, if you look at this next slide, we have how psychological disorders are going up, right? Self-reported by college. The next slide, anxiety is up. And you can see it again in 2010, that was basically when the iPhone first came out. If you go to the next slide, time with people that are in each other's company is going down. What's sad is that even kids who go and hang out together, they'll be together, but they're spending all of their time on a phone or a tablet. And the next one, is there any surprise that loneliness has skyrocketed? That you'll hear teenagers and college kids who report, I don't really have any true friends. And you sit there and go, well, why is that? Well, because they've never actually hung out together, because 80% of childhood has been replaced with scrolling through social media. That whether they're going to hang out after school or riding bikes in the neighborhood or anything like that, they are replacing all of that with just scrolling through a screen. And so obviously it's pretty easy to think that that's just going to affect mental health, right? That people are developing these virtual worlds that are so important. And I wish I was joking here. After I spoke at Immaculate Conception a couple weeks ago, a parent came up to me and said, my daughter, who is at Mount, has 9 Snapchat accounts. 9! Why on earth would you need 9 Snapchat accounts? She goes, well, this one's for this, and this one's for this, and this one's for this, and this one's for this. All the things that she uses these different Snapchat accounts for. And what we're seeing is that people are developing these online personalities, but when they actually go to a football game and have to talk to each other, they don't have a personality to discuss. And it's the truth. The virtual world has become the main show. How many friends do I have? How many likes do I have? And all that. But the real world, I'll go to the game just to take a picture. And I'll hear that. Look, I know I'm the drug dealer telling you not to let your kids take the drugs because I run Catholic social media, right? I get it, right? I get the hypocrisy. I 100% do. I have social media. I totally understand it. But it's amazing that there will be kids who will say, like driver's ed, I teach driver's ed, we have boys and girls, and they'll say, you go to the parties to take pictures. You don't go to parties to hang out with each other. You go so you can take a picture and post it. It's just like, how did we get here, right? And so it's not just affecting the mental health of people as far as functioning, it's affecting how they function in the real world. If you look at this next slide, this was a poll of 800 employers, okay? What it's like to interview people for Gen Z. They can't make eye contact. They don't dress appropriately. There was one guy who had a Zoom, and the interviewer or the applicant refused to turn his camera on. Wouldn't even Zoom with the person. Now, if everyone thought about your kid right now at 25 or 30, right? Think of what you want your child to be at 25 years old or 30 years old. You will all want your kid to be strong, hardworking, independent, self-reliant, right? They can take care of themselves. Look at this last one. 20% had to bring a parent to a job interview. Can you imagine? It's not going to the snow cone stand when they're 12. Can you imagine having to go to a bank or a hospital or something like that because your kid is too nervous about talking to a potential employer? And so we're seeing that there's this failure to launch of these children, and it's because they've never really accepted anything that was rigorous in their life, right? And I understand if your 3-year-old forgets his water bottle and you bring it, but what's happening is whether it's your son calls you because he's in 6th grade and he forgot his gym shoes and you brought it up here, or because he's in 5th grade, well, everybody's having a phone, you gotta give it to me. And it's just like, I know I shouldn't. I know I should teach you this valuable lesson, but I just can't, right? And you just go and say, today, this is where it's affecting them, right? And they'll be 25 or 30 and they can't do anything on their own. And so those soft failures, that's what we call it at Catholic all the time. Hyde is saying that the rigor that kids need to face on the playground or in real life with no's from parents, that is what's going to develop a sense of resiliency for them to be able to go on and be able to have a successful and independent life. And so if you see this next slide, what he's saying is we have replaced this, right, the regular, everyday childhood play that we all know for this, the next slide, which is tag rules, that your teachers have to govern every single thing that occurs on the playground. And this happens in Little Rock. This happens across the country. You name it. You name a school, and I will tell you that every single principal or teacher has been called by a parent saying, the teachers should govern all play. They should structure it all to where no one's picked last, no one has hurt feelings. And so, when you see basically those that I guess we would say the reps that they have, the practice that they have on the playground, that's the stuff that builds up this backbone that's going to help them become a successful person later in life. And so how can we change all of this? Right? If you go to the next slide. Well, I'm sorry, before we change all this. This is what we have replaced childhood with, right? If you go to the next slide here. This one, if it would start moving, if you go to the actual Ancient Generation website, this is from that website, and it's just all the movement, all the gifts, and all the things that you see, and it's gross. You're like, oh my gosh, this is the nonsense that I'm seeing every day in such a collective group that you go, like, why are we letting our kids see this? And so how can all this be changed? Into this slide here, right? So Jonathan Haidt says there are 4 new norms that we should accept. The first one is obvious, no smartphones before high school, but really the third one is obvious, no phone-free school, and that's what's great here at Christ the King and Catholic and Mount. We don't have phones. The no smartphones before school. I know my kids are going to get a phone at some point, right? But they will definitely not get a smartphone. That's 100% right. They will absolutely in no way, shape, or form have that. The other is no social media before 16. So again, the drug dealer dealing the drugs, I'll see that kids will start following Catholic social media accounts, and I'll just go like, that kid's in 6th. I have a nephew who's a freshman and a nephew who's a 6th grader, so I know some of these kids. I'm going, they're in 6th or 7th grade. Why? They're too young to have this. There's nothing on this that they can really understand and grapple with. So no social media before 16. And then the last one, this was the hardest, the more independent free play, responsibility and all that in the real world. To let your kids go and play without mom and dad watching, right? To let them go around the corner and you can't see, right? That is what Hyde is saying we are replacing childhood with as far as giving them a device. That they're now not going out and playing. And I even saw some kids riding a bike one day and I go, gosh, I can't remember the last time I saw kids in my neighborhood riding a bike. When was the last time y'all saw kids in your neighborhood riding bikes and playing by themselves without parents? But if you think about your childhood, you probably would say that happened all the time. And so these new norms he's talking about is with this collective action plan that if we all do this together and your son or your daughter says, hey, I need a smartphone too. No, you don't. Because all your friends at Christ the King, at Holy Souls, at IC, all the Catholic schools that you're going to go to and be with in high school, they've all banded together and we're not doing this, right? So you're not the one person that's left out. So you'll see that, it's that whole aspect of parents saying, I just don't want my one kid to be left out. After the IC speech, we were told that a dad said, my daughter is not allowed to have Snapchat or TikTok. All of the kids at the table only talk about Snapchat and TikTok, so she's completely left out of it. But all they do is fight about it. And therefore, she's happy that she's not in the fight, but she's completely feeling left out. I was like, if I were to call all those parents together and say, your kids, this is what they do at lunch, or on the playground or whatever, surely every one of those parents would say, we're not having Snapchat and TikTok. All you're going to do is fight about it. So if we can all band together, as he says, it's going to make it a lot easier for us in the future. I wish I was joking here that I work with a lady whose daughter is in second grade, and she said that one of her friends already has, and she goes to not a Catholic school in Little Rock. She's in second grade, and she already has a phone. She has an iPhone, right? I wish I was joking. A second grader with an iPhone. What does a second grader need an iPhone for? So what Hite is saying as far as the smartphones go is give your kid a phone, just give them a dumb phone, give them a regular phone. There are so many models that are coming out now that aren't smartphones that you can end up giving your kid won't be embarrassed about. 10 years ago, if you gave your kid a flip phone, like you said, this is like my grandmother's phone, you'd be a little mortified to have that. But there are great options now that are available for kids that they wouldn't be embarrassed by. So as far as what we're doing is, as societies, we're replacing this childhood aspect back to this free play thing, and we're going away from this. The next slide. It's like, is this kind of childhood gone, right? And we replaced it with this. And when you see something like that, we're just making these kids who are just zombies who don't know how to interact with their peers. They're so locked in here, they can't have conversations with anyone. And so, another thing that you can do is this next slide, the Wait Till 8 program. This is that if you pledge that you won't give your kid a smartphone or social media until 8th grade at a minimum. Jonathan Haidt says it should really be sophomore year in high school. But this is a great program. It started here in Little Rock as a local chapter. And all of these schools can have parents who will pledge to make sure that they won't give their kid a device, which is growing bigger and bigger now in Little Rock. I definitely encourage all of you guys to take that pledge. You'll hear a little bit more about it here in just a second. And then the next one, also back to this. So if you look at, if you've read King Arthur, the Once Future King, once Arthur goes up and touches the sword, as soon as he touches it, he hasn't even pulled it out yet, as soon as he touches it, his vision clears. Right? The light starts to change. It's like the whole world is going into a trance because the God-chosen king is here ready to go. Right? Just for touching his destiny. So what if your kid is the next great saint, or the next great doctor, or the next great lawyer, or banker, or teacher at Christ the King, right? Or the next great mom, or the next great dad, or the next great t-ball coach. It doesn't matter what it is. But they never got to practice those attributes as a child that they would need to develop and grow to become that independent adult, because we just said, here, I need 10 minutes, here, take the phone, take the device, and we were okay with it. And they never got to develop that personality that could make them grow into that next great person. And then, when they have the device, you say, hey man, check this out behind you. This awesome destiny you've got. And they just go, and they go back to their phone. Right? What if that's what we're doing by giving these kids these devices instead of letting them go outside and play? And so this is a worthy fight. This is a fight that we have got to fight. It is literally, and I'm not just saying this because it sounds good, it is literally for the souls of our children. And what we have to do as parents is we've got to be strong enough to say, turn off the phone and go play outside. That's where this fight begins. Thank you guys so much for having me.